Emeka was the kind of man every mother wanted for her daughter: calm, hard-working, and deeply respectful. He worked long hours at the bank but always made time for his wife, Lola. Lola, on the other hand, was a beautiful and talented fashion designer, known for creating stunning outfits that made her clients feel like royalty. Together, they were the couple everyone admired. In church, at community gatherings, and even at the market, people would point at them and say, "That's what true love looks like." Their smiles were effortless, their laughter natural, and their hands always seemed to find each other without thought. To outsiders, it was a love story written by the heavens. Their home reflected the same warmth. The living room was always filled with fresh flowers, and the kitchen often carried the smell of Lola's cooking. Emeka loved to boast about her talent, not just in design but in every little thing she touched. Lola, too, would proudly tell her friends how lucky she was to have a man who supported her dreams without hesitation. They celebrated anniversaries like teenagers in love and shared inside jokes that could make them laugh in the middle of serious conversations. There was no sign, not even a hint, that anything could disturb their perfect world. Neighbors envied the way Emeka opened the gate for her every evening and the way she waited outside to welcome him home. Even their arguments, rare as they were, never lasted more than a few hours before one of them would apologize with a smile. In everyone's eyes, they were proof that trust and loyalty still existed in marriage. People asked them for advice, newlyweds saw them as role models, and older couples praised their maturity. If anyone had said trouble was coming for them, it would have been dismissed as pure jealousy. But life, as Emeka would soon learn, had a way of hiding storms behind the brightest skies. Beneath all the beauty and love that others saw, something was slowly, quietly changing, something that would turn their perfect picture into a shattered frame. It started slowly, almost unnoticeable at first. Emeka would come home from the bank expecting to see Lola in the kitchen or working in her small studio, but instead, he would find her dressed up and ready to leave. She began spending more evenings outside, saying she had urgent fashion orders that couldn't wait. At first, Emeka didn't question it. He knew her business sometimes demanded long hours, and he was proud she was attracting high-paying clients. But soon, the late nights became too frequent to ignore. He noticed she no longer asked him to drive her. Instead, she would grab her car keys in a hurry, kiss him lightly on the cheek, and promise to be back before it gets too late. When she returned, her perfume seemed stronger, her smile a little forced, and she often avoided his eyes. One night, as Emeka passed by her studio door, he heard her whispering on the phone. Her voice was soft but urgent, almost intimate. He paused, trying to make sense of the tone. When he stepped in and asked who she was talking to, she quickly ended the call and smiled, saying it was just a client confirming a dress fitting. She added that the client was very important and needed special attention. Emeka wanted to believe her, but something didn't feel right. She had started locking her phone, something she never used to do. Messages would come in late at night, and she would step out to reply in private. When he asked more questions, she would laugh and tell him not to worry, that her career was finally taking off and he should be happy for her. He tried to push the doubts aside, telling himself that marriage required trust. But deep down, a quiet unease began to grow. The woman who once shared every detail of her day with him was now becoming a mystery in his own home. And as much as he loved her, Emeka couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away, something important, something dangerous. It was a quiet afternoon at the bank when Chinedu, one of Emeka's closest colleagues, approached his desk. His voice was low, almost cautious, as if what he was about to say needed to be hidden from the air itself. "Emeka," he began, glancing around to be sure no one was listening, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I've seen Lola a few times recently. And she wasn't alone." Emeka looked up, confused. Chinedu leaned closer and whispered, "She was with Mr. Ade, her boss. You know, the wealthy one who owns that fashion firm." For a moment, Emeka laughed. The idea sounded ridiculous. Lola loved him, and besides, she was dedicated to her work. "Come on, Chinedu," he said, shaking his head, "you must have misunderstood. Maybe it was a business meeting." But Chinedu didn't laugh. "Brother, it didn't look like business. They were together at a cafe one evening, just the two of them. And I saw them again, near the marina, very close, like people who share more than work." Emeka brushed it off outwardly, not wanting to give life to the thought. He forced a smile and told Chinedu he appreciated the concern, but inside, something shifted. It was as if Chinedu's words had dropped a stone into calm water, and the ripples were spreading through his mind. On the surface, he carried on as normal. He went home, greeted Lola warmly, and listened as she spoke about her day. But his eyes searched for signs, anything that might prove or disprove what he'd heard. Her laughter seemed a bit too quick, her stories about work just vague enough to leave questions. That night, lying beside her in bed, he stared at the ceiling long after she had fallen asleep. The image of her with Mr. Ade kept replaying in his head, even though he had never seen it himself. The knot of suspicion grew tighter, heavy in his chest. He told himself there had to be an explanation, but deep down, he already feared the truth might hurt more than he could bear. It was a Thursday evening when Lola came into the living room, her phone in hand, announcing that she had to attend a work dinner. Emeka looked up from the newspaper, a little surprised. She rarely attended such events, and when she did, it was usually with a group of designers or clients. This time, she seemed unusually excited. She disappeared into the bedroom, and when she emerged, Emeka almost didn't recognize her. She wore a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, paired with gold earrings and a subtle perfume that lingered in the air like a whisper. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in a way he hadn't seen in years. For a moment, Emeka just stared. The last time she had gone to such lengths for her appearance, it had been for their anniversary. "Work dinner, you said?" he asked casually, forcing a smile. Lola nodded quickly, avoiding his eyes as she grabbed her purse. "It's important, I can't be late," she replied, checking her phone again. Emeka noticed her hands tremble slightly as she scrolled through her messages. She slipped on her heels and, without waiting for further conversation, kissed him lightly on the cheek and headed for the door. He stood there, watching her walk to the car, her movements fast, almost urgent. Something about the way she left didn't feel right. There had been no invitation for him to join, no explanation of who else would be there. Just a vague excuse and a sudden rush. When the sound of the car faded into the distance, Emeka sat back down but found he couldn't read another word from his newspaper. The image of her in that dress burned in his mind. She hadn't dressed like that for him in a long time, and the thought that she was doing it for someone else gnawed at his heart. That night, as he waited for her to return, every minute felt heavier than the last. And deep inside, he knew this might have been the first real crack in the perfect picture they had shown the world. Emeka sat in the living room, pretending to scroll through his phone as Lola got ready. She had mentioned another, important dinner, and once again, she was dressed in a way that made his chest tighten. When she finally left, closing the door behind her, he waited a few moments before grabbing his car keys. His heart was pounding, not from anger yet, but from the need to know the truth. He drove slowly, keeping a safe distance from her car so she wouldn't notice. The streets were dimly lit, and the city felt quieter than usual, as if it knew something was about to happen. He kept his headlights low, following her through traffic, each turn she made pulling him deeper into a sense of dread. After nearly 30 minutes, she left the familiar parts of town and headed toward the outskirts. Emeka's grip on the steering wheel tightened. There was nothing out there except a few warehouses, some private estates, and hotels. When her car finally slowed, he saw the glowing lights of one of the city's most expensive hotels rise ahead. She pulled into the driveway, and he parked a short distance away, careful not to draw attention. From the shadows, he watched her step out of the car. She paused for a moment, checking her phone, and then began walking toward the grand entrance. The hotel's glass doors reflected her image as she disappeared inside. Emeka sat frozen in his seat, the air in the car suddenly heavy. His mind searched for explanations, a business meeting, a client consultation, but none of them made sense in a place like this. A slow, cold realization crept in. He had never been to this hotel before, but he knew its reputation. It wasn't the kind of place for casual meetings, it was a place for privacy, secrecy, and things people didn't want the world to see. Still, he couldn't turn away. Something inside him told him that whatever he found next would change everything. And yet, his feet itched to move forward, to see with his own eyes what his heart was already starting to fear. Emeka stepped out of his car, keeping to the shadows as he moved closer to the hotel entrance. Through the large glass doors, he spotted her almost instantly. Lola stood in the lobby, her face lit up in a smile he hadn't seen in months. Standing beside her was a tall, well-dressed man, Mr. Ade. Emeka recognized him from the photographs Lola had once shown him, calling him, "just my boss." They stood close, their bodies leaning toward each other as if the rest of the world didn't exist. Mr. Ade said something that made her laugh, and then, without hesitation, he placed his hand on the small of her back. She didn't move away. Instead, she looked up at him with eyes that spoke a language Emeka wished he didn't understand. From where he stood, hidden behind a row of potted plants near the side entrance, Emeka's stomach twisted. He told himself it might still be business-related, but the casual touches, the lingering smiles, and the way they looked at each other told a different story. He watched as they walked together toward the elevator. Mr. Ade pressed the button, and while they waited, Lola reached out and adjusted his tie with gentle fingers, like a wife fussing over her husband. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside without a glance behind them. The sight made Emeka's chest tighten. He moved quickly, slipping through the side door into the lobby, his eyes locked on the floor indicator above the elevator. It climbed steadily, 6, 7, 8, until it stopped at the top floor. A rush of heat and cold swept over him at the same time. He knew he shouldn't follow, that what he might see could break something inside him forever. Yet his feet carried him toward another elevator. He stepped in, pressed the button for the top floor, and stood in silence as the numbers ticked upward. When the doors opened, the carpeted hallway stretched out before him. Somewhere ahead, a truth was waiting behind a door, a truth he wasn't ready for, but could no longer avoid. Emeka stepped out of the elevator, his heartbeat so loud it echoed in his ears. The hallway was quiet, the air thick with the faint scent of expensive perfume. He walked slowly, every step heavier than the last, his eyes scanning the room numbers. At the far end of the corridor, he saw them, Lola and Mr. Ade, standing close, speaking in low voices. They reached a door, and Mr. Ade swiped a key card. Lola glanced around quickly, as if making sure no one was watching, then slipped inside with him. The door closed softly, but to Emeka, it sounded like a wall falling between them. His hands trembled, and for a moment, he stood frozen, hoping he had imagined everything. But something inside him refused to turn back. He moved toward the door, each step powered by a mix of fear and anger. When he reached it, he pressed his ear against the wood. Muffled voices, a soft laugh, then silence. His breathing grew shallow, and before he could stop himself, he turned the handle. The door opened easily. The warm light from inside spilled into the hallway, revealing a scene he would never forget. Lola was in Mr. Ade's arms, her head resting against his chest, their faces close enough to kiss. It wasn't a handshake, a hug of gratitude, or anything that could be explained away. It was intimacy, the kind that belonged only to them, the kind she once shared with him. For a moment, no one moved. Lola's eyes widened as she pulled back, her face draining of color. Mr. Ade straightened, his expression calm, almost unbothered. Emeka felt his heart shatter in his chest, the soundless break echoing in his soul. All the late nights, the secret calls, the whispered warnings, suddenly, they all made sense. He had hoped to be wrong, but now, there was no hope left. The truth was in front of him, raw and undeniable, and it cut deeper than any wound he had ever known. Emeka stood frozen in the doorway, his hands clenched at his sides. Lola took a step forward, her eyes filling with tears. "Emeka, please," she cried, her voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like." The words sounded weak, almost rehearsed, and they only made his chest tighten more. He could still see the way she had been holding Mr. Ade moments earlier, the way her body had fit so naturally against his. Mr. Ade, on the other hand, remained perfectly calm. He didn't look embarrassed or apologetic. In fact, he walked toward the minibar, poured himself a drink, and turned back with a faint smile. "Emeka," he said in a smooth, measured tone, "I think we can settle this like men. No need for drama." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick bundle of cash, and placed it on the table. "Take this, and forget what you saw tonight." The gesture made Emeka's blood boil. He looked from the money to Mr. Ade, then back to Lola, who was now sobbing harder, covering her face with her hands. "You think this is about money?" Emeka's voice was low but sharp, cutting through the tension in the room. Lola stepped forward, trying to grab his arm. "I swear, it's not what you think. We were just talking." Her words broke off when he pulled his arm away. "Talking? In a hotel room? On the top floor? Dressed like this?" His voice cracked, and for the first time, she couldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Ade sighed, as if the situation bored him. "Think carefully, Emeka. Walk away now, and no one has to know." But Emeka wasn't thinking about the money or the secrecy. He was thinking about every moment they had shared, every promise she had made, and how easily it had been broken. The pain in his chest was heavier than his anger, and it showed in the way his voice softened, almost breaking. "You've already taken something from me that no money can replace." The room fell silent, except for Lola's quiet sobs and the dull hum of the air conditioner. Lola's sobs slowly turned into shaky breaths. She wiped her face with trembling hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emeka, I didn't plan for this to happen." He didn't respond, his eyes fixed on her, waiting. She glanced at Mr. Ade, then back at her husband. "When I first met him, it was all about work. He promised to invest in my fashion brand, to help me open my own boutique. Emika's jaw tightened. And this, he said quietly, gesturing between them, is part of the investment? She shook her head quickly, stepping closer. No, it wasn't like that at first. I wanted so badly to make something of myself, to build my dream without asking you for money. He said he believed in me, he made me feel like it was possible. Her voice cracked as she continued. But then, he started asking me to spend more time with him. Dinners, private meetings. I told myself it was just business, but I knew it wasn't. I knew, Emika. She looked down, ashamed. And I let it happen. I thought I could control it, that it wouldn't go too far. But it did. Emika felt a sharp pain in his chest, not just from betrayal, but from the realization that she had been living a double life while lying beside him every night. So you traded our marriage for a shop. His voice was low, trembling. Tears streamed down her face. I thought I was doing it for us, for our future. But somewhere along the line, I forgot who I was, and I hurt you in the worst way. Mr. Ade remained silent, leaning casually against the wall as if her confession meant nothing. But to Emika, every word felt like another cut. The dream they had built together now felt like ashes slipping through his fingers. He turned away, because looking at her hurt too much. In that moment, the truth was out, but it didn't bring relief. It only made the wound deeper. Emika stood in the center of the room for a long moment, the weight of Lola's words pressing down on him like a heavy stone. The air felt thick, suffocating, and every breath came with a sharp ache in his chest. He looked at her, her tear-streaked face, the trembling hands that once fit so perfectly in his, and felt something inside him break. The woman he thought he knew was now a stranger, and the life they had built together suddenly felt like a story someone had ripped apart. Without another word, he turned toward the door. Lola reached out, her voice desperate. Emika, please, we can fix this. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. If he stayed a moment longer, he feared his pain would turn into something darker. The hallway outside was silent, but inside his mind, there was chaos. Each step toward the elevator felt heavier, as though he was walking away from more than just the hotel room. He was leaving behind the trust, the laughter, and the version of love everyone in their community had admired. When he stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights seemed dimmer. He walked past the parked cars, past the doorman who gave him a polite nod, and into his own car. For a moment, he just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, his eyes stinging. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, to turn back and ask why she had thrown everything away. But deep down, he already knew there was no answer that would undo what he had seen. He started the engine, the hum of it breaking the heavy silence. As he drove away, memories flashed, her smile at their wedding, the nights they stayed up talking about the future, the pride in her voice when she called him her husband. Those memories now felt like ghosts, haunting him in the rearview mirror. By the time he reached the main road, one truth was painfully clear: whatever they had was gone. And no matter how much he wished it, life would never return to the perfect love everyone once believed they had.